When you're
But,
talking as
when
if
you say,
hang on, Mikhail, you heard me talking, man. Don't talk over me. When you mention the oral Torah and my rejection of it, you're talking to me as if it actually exists and I just reject it. And what I'm telling you is that it is a wholesale fiction. It doesn't exist at all. No prophet ever appealed to it. When Daniel's praying for his people, he never says, you violated the oral law. He always talks about the written law. Josiah, he issued his reforms, 2 Chronicles chapter 36, based off of a copy of the Torah that was found in the temple. He was disturbed and nonplussed because the people had not been following the written Torah. No judgment, no indictments from Yahweh were ever issued against the Israelites for violating some fictional oral law. It was all the written Torah. And this all goes back, man. We can go back to chapter 34, 27 of Exodus. Numerous examples showing you that there was no oral Torah in the Tanakh.
so are you saying from the written Torah, you can get all the details of the law and all the nuances?
See, once again, you're talking as if the oral Torah actually exists. When you say just from the written Torah alone, you're indirectly hinting at the idea that there is an oral Torah. And I'm telling you, there's no oral Torah. Here, let me read something to you from the Jewish scholar Karine Zetterholm in her book, Jewish Interpretation of the Bible, Ancient and Contemporary. She says, other laws are not presented as being the result of exegesis, but simply seem to rest on rabbinic authority. Such is, for instance, the case with the laws of the Sabbath as stated in the Mishnah, where the meaning of the word work is defined as encompassing 39 categories of activities with no reference to the biblical text. Did you hear that? With no reference to the biblical text. Mishnah, Shabbat 7:2. The fact that the Mishnah merely lists the different kinds of work forbidden on the Sabbath with no reference to biblical verses suggests that the development of these prohibitions occurred independently of the biblical text. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Although the Talmud, Babylonian Shabbat 49, hang on, links them to biblical passages by making a point of the fact that two occurrences of the Sabbath commandment, Exodus 31:12 through 17 and 35:1 through 3, are directly connected to the description of the building of the tabernacle in the desert, and thus concludes that work includes all activities connecting to the building of the tabernacle. This seems to be a later development. Then she goes on. There are two ways in which rabbinic laws are preserved: independently of biblical verses, as in the Mishnah, and number two, in connection with biblical verses, as in Midrash. In the case of the Mishnah, the laws are based on rabbinic authority rather than on the Bible. We just got through talking about the Mishnah, right? Let me read it again. In the case of the Mishnah, this is a Jewish scholar. That's why I tell people all the time, there's a difference between Judaism on the street and Judaism in the academy. When you get to the academy, you tend to deal with rabbis that are a little bit more honest. Whereas in the case of Midrash, it is the fact that they are derived from the Bible that gives them authority. It also seems that laws originated in these two ways, as one, extra-textual traditions on the one hand, and two, as a consequence of biblical interpretation on the other. Which one of these is the main source of rabbinic laws is a hotly debated issue among scholars, and it recalls the scholarly debate on how much of rabbinic expansions derives from exegesis of the biblical text and how much is generated by outside non-textual concerns. such as ideology and theology in the case of non-legal texts. In the case of the rabbinic law, scholars take similar positions, some arguing that most laws originated as biblical traditions that were only later connected to a biblical verse in order to anchor an already existing custom in the Bible, while others maintain that rabbinic laws were primarily derived through exegesis on the biblical text. Yet others suggest that the methods coexisted, perhaps represented by different schools. So here, the doggone rabbinical scholars can't even agree on the basis of where these traditions even came from. This is why I'm saying, Mikhail, I think you need to do a little bit more studying, right, before you kind of argue in favor of an oral, because it seems like you're going to
I'm
bat,
not arguing in favor.
you're twerking for Judaism. You need those guys as friends to argue against Christians.